But the fact is that if I look at campaigns, I don't think we should have traditional campaigns anymore. There's a strong reason for that. We're back
Yeah, you ready for this?
as ready as I can be.
I see you had a Top Gun today with the old aviator jacket on. Big up the 80s and 90s. Love it.
Yeah, I just need to have a pair of Ray-Bans here, but
yeah, aren't they? They look like they are. So no, I think obviously we're showing our age. Both got the grey beards, got the glasses. You've got the old school jacket on. I'm going for the 80s style, sort of pastel Don Johnson look. So we're all good. So we're obviously doing these series of videos. We're on the final one, the final furlong. So we've done who are you talking to? We've done why are you talking to them? Where should you talk to them? And what should you say? And there's now the big exciting one, drum roll, how. So how is obviously a hugely important aspect of this because it will, I think in your words, it will bring it all together.
This is where the rubber meets the road.
Exactly.
So
let's start off with how should campaigns work?
How should they ideally work, or how they work in reality?
In this new world we've sort of entered in, and we're obviously trying to sort of share our thoughts on these videos.
I think the critical aspect about campaigns is that they are currently being looked upon as activities, marketing activities that just happen, and then people get lost in the weeds. So the first way in which I can answer that question is how should campaigns work? They should work when they're connected better with outcomes and objectives rather than just activities. Let's get this stuff out there and just throwing stuff on the wall. So I think that is probably the first thing that should shift. And the second thing then that should shift is perhaps just drop the word campaign completely. Because I think that is the fundamental shift that's happened over the past 20 years, I would say, but now definitely in the past 5 years, it's coming to a head.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at that in a bit more depth. I think from a lot of perspectives, the sort of like the millennials and the generation beneath them have become dominating sort of marketing figures. And us guys in Gen X are dinosaurs. So the whole landscape sort of changed. And for us to do marketing in today's world, we have to enter into the younger people's world almost. But there's that gap of knowledge between the two. I think that's really where we have to try and add some value. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think you've nailed it. Really, it's a generational thing, and generations can. You can see that millennials are now becoming decision makers in organizations, and Gen Zers are their main customers. And Gen X was basically known as the forgotten generation, and we still are the forgotten generation. So so let it remain there. Let Gen X be forgotten for a while. But the fact is that if I look at campaigns, I don't think we should have traditional campaigns anymore. There's a strong reason for that. And this reason is information symmetry. I mean, information symmetry is what drives people to behave completely differently with brands today. And even if I just discount the word brand and just say, hey, how do you meet your doctor? And, in the UK, it's the NHS, but across the world, how do you meet your doctor? You're not feeling well. And the first thing you do is you kind of Google your symptoms and you try to understand and besides being convinced that you've got cancer at some point in time, we all have an ability to understand what the symptoms are, what the diseases may be and what the cure should be before we go to the doctor and say, hey, you know what, I got this, and give me my prescription. And the fact is, the doctor doesn't know what to do. But this is literally the way in which all relationships have changed in this world of information symmetry. So I don't think that Gen Zers are actually going to take to campaigns wherein brands are talking down to them quite seriously. And that is where the how should change.
Yeah, I think one of the key points on that is that now there's just such an array of noise out there that before Coca-Cola, Christmas time, bang, they're everywhere. Their sales go through the roof. And I think for other companies, perhaps in the B2B space, marketing was far more sort of linked to revenue. We did this marketing campaign, we had this spike in sales. Whereas now it's totally different. What you've got to do is make sure that your spikes may not be as high, but actually it's that ground between them where you're staying constant. And you have to do that by engaging. So to do engagement all the time at a level that will hit you at the top of the spike, which a campaign in the old school would have done, is no longer really viable.
Yeah, I mean, you can still use campaigns. They call it the Hero Hub Help framework, and there are many such frameworks. But essentially, there was an old school term that I'd love to throw in here, which is called, this film is a sleeper hit. What does that mean? It means that it's kind of grown over a period of time without really people understanding that, it's accumulating revenues. So we are moving from bestsellers to sleeper hits, even in terms of campaigns. Yeah.
Shawshank Redemption is a classic example of that.
Perfect example. Shawshank Redemption. It is absolutely.
Anyone just watch it.
Yeah.
One of those things you've got to watch. So that's how they should work. What about how did they work? What was the old school?
See, the old school thing was how you thought of a campaign, you thought of a big idea, and you thought of how you're going to communicate that big idea. And so it was all about this campaign and its big idea and how it will be communicated. Now it shifted from the big idea to a point of view. And it has shifted from campaigns to conversations. So maybe the question that all marketers need to ask themselves is, what is the conversation that I need to have in this year with my consumers or clients that is actually going to shift the dial without pushing them? And how do I actually make it as seamless as possible? I think that is really where it's at.
Do you think then in that case it's not so much about campaigns, it's actually about your marketing having various different themes and you're consistently communicating with those across different platforms, across different segments? And some themes may be powerful on some platforms, some segments, but not both.
Yeah, no, it is absolutely. It is, if you remember all the videos that have led up to here, this is where the rubber meets the road, as I said at the beginning of this one, because it's, all your hows and, the whats, the whys, the wheres and whens, they all need to be considered for having a great conversation. I mean, you're not going to have the same conversation with a colleague when you're having a drink with that colleague. After office hours, and you're not going to have a very kindly conversation with your boss when you're being appraised in a very bad way. So it's contextual. It is dependent on who you're talking with and what their persona is at that point in time, and whether the conversation only needs to be there in that specific platform or should it go across platforms. So there's so many different nuances towards actually having conversations like the one we are having now.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose looking at it in a more general term, what we're talking about really is communications across the board.
It is.
Now you have to, it's not just about acquiring the customer, but actually you need to have a decent communication strategy as well to your existing customers to make sure that you keep them on board. And actually with that, with the more community-led approach, you can then combine the two. Some stuff is for the entire community, and some stuff is actually just for your potential customers, and some stuff is just actually for your post-sale clients.
No, you're right. I mean, that's where your segments come in. But you said something really interesting a few minutes ago when you mentioned the Coca-Cola.
Yeah, because I did.
Yeah. You said Coca-Cola worked, and created a signal for itself a few years ago, but now it's changed. And so what has changed? What has changed is that you don't need to amplify your own signal. You need to be able to understand how to get other people to have your conversation for you and amplify your signal for you. And that's the biggest difference. I mean, there's a really famous example of Kendall Jenner's Pepsi ad, which I think probably got the entire marketing team at Pepsi fired because of the way it was so disastrous. I mean, seriously, if you see that ad, you'll understand what a disaster it is, because it was using conventional methods in a digital world. And maybe that campaign would have worked about 15 years ago, but today it tanked because that is not the way in which you run a campaign, like by ticking all the boxes. It is having a genuine conversation.
Yeah. So we touched on platforms. So one of the keys that we would recommend is to differentiate on the platforms. So how do we do that?
I think you've again said something which is interesting, because yes, we need to differentiate across platforms, but we need to be distinctive on each platform, because there's a difference between because when you're differentiating against competition. But when you're being distinctive, it means you're holding a memory structure in your customer or client's head. And being distinctive actually is directly connected to visual stuff. It's directly connected to the way in which you present yourself. You said I look like Top Gun Part 2. That is certainly how I'm presenting myself today. So it's all interlinked, and we really need to understand how all these things work in terms of metadata.
I think if you take it on a very personal level, you're reaching out to a community in a certain environment. If you think of it in the real world, you've got a group of really close friends and family, and you might see those people in different environments. You see them at your birthday party, different. You'll present yourself differently. You'll act differently. If it's at a wedding, again different, and then God forbid at a funeral. So the narratives and the way that you present yourselves are different in those different environments, like they are on different platforms for brands and companies.
Absolutely. So that's why the how is so deeply connected to the earlier 4 videos, which you guys must see. It makes more sense of this one. But I mean the what, the why, the how. I'm sorry, the how is connected to the what, where, when, and why. Yeah.
You sure? You want to say it again? Should we do a double take?
Maybe I'll just point to various places where people can go for the.
Well, we definitely will have the in video videos of the links to all of those.
Absolutely.
On this, maybe now, maybe a bit later.
Yeah.
And then also, differentiate the platforms, segments as well. What's your take on that?
I think segments is really critical, because what we are beginning to understand is whether segments are really effective, is a really effective way of doing marketing. Because we are beginning to understand that segments have limitations and they're porous, and the young and young at heart are not very different from each other. And we are now beginning to understand Carl Jung's archetypes much more deeper. We're beginning to understand that we are all born with some traits which get connected to certain contexts, and we all apparently behave like each other. I mean, think of yourself and me watching maybe a neutral match. It's not India versus England, but maybe Australia versus Pakistan, hated enemies of sorts on the cricket field, that is. And then you suddenly see how we will bond.
Yeah.
That's how it will work.
In that instance, obviously, Pakistan and India, biggest rivals in world cricket.
Yeah.
And then also England, Australia. So,
exactly.
There's dynamics at play.
Exactly.
So we've gone through the who, the why, the where, the what, and the how. Sorry for clapping. I won't again. So we've obviously done these so we can explain to people what we do, but we haven't, have we? So how can Extel actually help potential clients with these areas?
You're asking me for a sales pitch, Nick. That's not fair.
Yeah. Well, not a sales pitch. I mean, we don't do sales pitches.
No, we do conversations. We do conversations. We don't do campaigns, do we? We do conversations.
Exactly. So have a chat about what we could do for clients.
Absolutely. So the fact is that we will begin our interaction with clients with a workshop. Maybe we'll make it free for a few people. How about that? Just a very quick workshop that will make all this stuff that's happened, more specific for the client that we can help with. And that's one. And of course, if you really want to hear our distinctive and differentiated value proposition, there's another video there somewhere here.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure I'll go and dig that video out. Thank you for watching, everyone. That's the end of our series. As you can see, I don't know where they're going to put them. but we've got these in-video links of the previous 4 videos. So please do have a look, or feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on LinkedIn as well. So thank you for watching, and
thank you.